Well, thank you again for welcoming me into your midst, into your congregation this morning. I know that Reverend TJ had initially asked Pastor Mary Herbig, one of the other pastors at Central Union, to come and to be with you this morning to give a word. And it would have been a great word. I was working with her. She was sharing a bit about what she was going to be sharing with you all, and I was so excited for you guys to be a part of it. So hopefully he will be able to have another opportunity to call her back again to be with you. She unfortunately had some family matters on the mainland to attend to, so if you can keep her in your thoughts, that would be appreciated. So thank you for welcoming me here today. When TJ told me what the theme was for this series, the theme of joy, I was telling Richard that one of my initial thoughts was that, well, for my last time of being with you, of celebrating with you, of being in this space, this sacred time together with you, that you all know pretty well what joy is about. The joy seemed to percolate up from this community. It seemed to be a hallmark of this community. In fact, I seem to think that you all are the sermon on joy by your very community, by your very lives. But thank you for allowing me to come to be a part of that joy and to share with you a brief reflection on it. None of us were happy the day the trees were coming down. We knew that the workers would be arriving that day. We didn't know when, but we knew the window of time. However, when their trucks rolled in and they got out and took out all their equipment, it was still a bit of a shock. Hearing the chainsaws and the crash of branches seemed to affect my kids the most. We were huddled inside the house watching from the windows, and as they peered through the blinds, they were in horror as these shrouded men tore through our shade and allowed the hot sun to come pouring into our front room. Through her tears, my daughter Emma asked me to go outside and to tell the yard workers to stop, to get out there and take away their saws and send them home, she said. She's a little bit older than that picture, by the way, and that was a few years ago. I told her that I couldn't. And I know it's a small matter, but it never feels good telling your keiki that you're powerless. I tried to explain to her that if I did go out there and even threw my body in front of one of the trees, they would just drive off, but more would come later to take down the fan palms. See, the decision to cut down the trees in our yard was not made by the workers themselves. I told her it wasn't made by us. The decision was made by our landlord, who had been persistently pressured by our neighbors to cut down the trees because they claimed the trees interfered with their garden. I'm not sure my kids understood the full situation. I'm not sure I fully understood it all. But my kids did understand that we were losing trees because our neighbor didn't like them. About 2 weeks later, I was outside with my son and he hit a baseball over the fence, into that neighbor's garden. A baseball that, mind you, would have been stopped had the fan palm been there, but that's beside the point. So my son and I made the trek to our neighbor, and our neighbor graciously agreed to let us retrieve the fallen ball in their garden. When we returned home, my daughter had an idea. She and my son decided that they would make cards and crafts for our neighbor because they were so happy to get the ball back that they wanted to share their joy and appreciation with this neighbor. I sat with them as they gleefully used their finest glitter and applied their well-honed gluing skills, put little puff balls on each card. I watched as joy went about its work, animating their little fingers and tickled their soul. Maybe my kids had forgotten about the loss of the trees. It had been a couple of weeks. Maybe they had forgotten about my neighbor's culpability. Maybe they had already forgiven the neighbors. Or maybe they were just so focused on the present, on the joy of creating, that was stronger than the pain of past destruction. Maybe my kids were just on to something. See, about 10 years ago, psychologists from Harvard University created an app called Track Your Happiness. The app was downloaded by thousands of people from all different walks of life. And the idea of the app was simple. Throughout the day, it would randomly ask you 3 questions. How do you feel right now? What are you doing? And are you thinking about something other than what you're doing? How do you feel? What are you doing? And are you thinking about something other than what you're doing? And if you are, have a little drop-down choice. Is what you're thinking about positive, negative, or neutral? They collected over 650,000 reports as people answered these questions throughout their day. And what they discovered is that our minds wander a lot. The results showed that people are thinking about something other than the present moment almost 50% of the time. We're worried about a possible future, or we're replaying a past conversation. We're daydreaming about our happy place, or we're mentally exhausted and just staring into the middle distance. So often we're not here. We're not in this moment. And the thing is, according to their study, they found that, at least according to these 650,000 reports, that when we're in this moment, we're happy. They found that when people are dialed in, focused on the now, on the people right in front of them, on the task at hand, that people generally report being happy. And the wild thing is that even if they're doing an activity that they're not if they don't like the activity that they're engaged in, the correlation is still the same. In other words, even if you're stuck in traffic or cleaning up after somebody else or doing an activity you find unpleasant, often we're still happier when we are 100% focused on that activity than when we're thinking about something else while doing that activity. There's joy to be found in this present moment. I'm convinced that when we're engaged in the here and now, we're more apt to appreciate the dozens of wonders that we otherwise fail to notice, the vibrant colors that enliven our world, the smells that stir cherished memories, the abundant opportunities that we have for good, and the gift, the deep breath. When we're focused on the moment that we're living, we are inoculated from the anxiety produced by the life that we're told we should be living. Staying present, savoring the now, it isn't easy, especially when there are so many ways to be distracted. It's difficult to remain focused on where I am, on who is around me, on who I want to be in this moment, on why I'm doing what I am doing. Being clear about this, in any given moment, is challenging. When I'm waiting, it's just so much easier to... What was that? When discussing with my friend the challenge of being present and my difficulty in staying focused on the moment, he suggested that I learn to surf. Now, that wasn't exactly what I was looking for. I just wanted him to say, yeah, it's hard, and validate my struggle. That's really all I was looking for. Maybe suggest a breathing technique or a bracelet or something. Looking to surf was the answer that he gave. And at his persistence, as well as the encouragement of others, that led me to get out on the water. And I wouldn't yet, after trying this for several months now, I wouldn't yet call myself a beginner. I am working up to beginner status. Right now, I think of myself more as a novice paddler who attempts to stand on occasion. But even in my neophyte state, his lesson in surfing has not been lost on me. See, he wanted me just to enjoy the ride. Because for those few moments when I am able to stand and I'm riding a wave, it behooves me to be in that moment. And I'm not thinking about the last wave that I caught, or more likely the last wave that I missed. When I'm riding on a wave, I'm not thinking about the next one to come. You're focused on the precious and precarious now. For me, I try to be as present as possible in that moment because I know it will not last. On the board, I think 4 seconds is my record so far, and then it's back to paddling again. And the limited amount of time actually riding the wave compared to the vast amount of time spent paddling and waiting, paddling and falling, paddling again, reminded me of a recent reflection by the late Ellis Avery. As I mentioned, she was an author. She was also the writing professor at Berkeley and Columbia. She won multiple awards for those books I mentioned. And she was at the forefront of the queer historical fiction movement. However, at the age of 41, she decided to make a career change and become a nurse practitioner. You see, she had developed an advanced case of reactive arthritis that often left her unable to walk. And as a way of trying to understand and live with her condition, she wanted to become a nurse. So while taking nursing classes, she was confined to a mobility scooter. Yet for her, the scooter wasn't an instrument of freedom, allowing her to get from point A to point B. For her, she talked about it as a constant reminder of what she had lost. And as she rode around the city streets, she wanted to shout out to people, "This isn't the real me. This time doesn't count. When I walk again, that's when I'll be real. That's when I'll be me." After a few years of study, Ellis moved to Bondi Beach in Australia. And from her apartment, she watched surfers every day. She says she dreamed of taking surfing lessons, but her fragile health ruled it out completely. As she put it, she was already surfing a mix of medications for her arthritis and the cancer that she later developed. And so from her window, she watched. She noticed that surfers spent a minimal amount of time doing what non-surfers would actually call surfing, that most of it was bobbing around in the water from her point of view. However, it seemed to her that surfers were surfers all the time. She writes, "They're surfers while they're out working their day jobs. They're surfers when they wake up early and walk their board to the beach. They're surfers when they drink their coffee or eat their pre-session snack. They're surfers when they paddle and wait. They're surfers when they ride, and they're surfers when they wipe out." As Ellis watched the surfers, it seemed to her like they didn't regret all the time that they didn't spend standing on their boards, sliding along the waves. They're surfers all the time. And the experience carried by the wave carried them throughout the day. And it led her to wonder, could I do that? Could I be happy even when I don't know whether I'll be able to walk the next day? Could I be happy even when I don't know if I'll be alive a year from now? Could the time I spend in humiliating doctor's appointments or struggling with simple tasks somehow still count as mine and not something I'm just having to get through? Instead of it just being time I'm waiting to be well, to be myself again, could I be me while I'm sick? Could I seize happiness and joy in these moments too? I think Ellis gives voice to a challenging question that is common to humanity. As she courageously steps into the unknown in the hopes of finding a deeper truth. Isn't that part of what we celebrate when we celebrate International Women's Day? Women who have inspired us, who have led us to new horizons. She doesn't answer the question for us. She leaves it with us, as if extending to us the invitation to answer it for ourselves. Could we too find joy even in the midst of challenge, struggle? I know I want to say yes, because I want to believe that joy is too strong to be restrained by the whims of circumstance. I want to believe that joy, like love, like peace, like hope, are woven all throughout our life. And they're not hiding behind some secret knowledge that only the wise can grasp. That they're not locked away in some tower inaccessible that only the strongest can climb. I want to believe that they're present in the now, in our everyday practices, in the meals that we share, in our work for justice, in our casual conversations, in the moments of pause, and in the gifts we give. Elijah and Emma, they led me to our neighbor's house after they had finished creating their cards. I'm not proud to say that while they were making on it, there was part of me that tried to encourage them to make the cards perhaps for someone else. What about Brandy and Gramps and Lola and Lolo? They'd like cards too. But they were resolute. These were for our neighbors. And as they held their gifts in their hands, they were practically floating with joy as we walked up the walkway and knocked on their front door. My neighbor received them and their gifts with grace and with gratitude. She invited them into her garden to pick flowers as gifts for their mother. It was an all-around beautiful experience as joy filled an empty space. In his reflection on joy, the noted theologian Frederick Buechner writes, "Joy is always all-encompassing, and there is nothing of us left over to hate with or to be afraid with, to feel guilty with or to be selfish about. Joy is something that by its nature humanity never hoards, but always wants to share. Joy is a mystery because it can happen anywhere, anytime, even under the most unpromising circumstances, even in the midst of suffering with tears in its eyes." Friends, this morning, I am a backup to a backup, right? There's so much of your story that I don't know. There's so much of your story that you come here with. There's so much concern and celebrations that are upon your heart this day. And in the days ahead, though, I suspect that there will be moments that will be a challenge. Maybe it's just the challenge of trying to find toilet paper somewhere on the island. Yet from what TJ has told me about you and from what I have seen of you, I am convinced together you are a community of strength, compassion, a community of joy. And I believe that nothing can take your passion for justice. Nothing can take your authentic aloha. And nothing can take your contagious joy. Amen.